Thank you for listening to another episode of Taking Stock, Talking All Things Retail. In today's episode, Robert Kaufman, CEO of the Parker Avery Group, and Arvind Gupta, President of Jesta I.S, will discuss why returns matter, reverse logistics, the customer experience, and cost implications. Robert has more than 25 years in the retail and apparel industries. He has held IT and executive level positions at international software and consulting firms. Arvind has built and implemented retail-focused ERP solutions for global Fortune 500 companies. Under his leadership, Jesta I.S has been ranked as a top 20 software vendor, and in 2021, he was recognized as one of the 20 most promising technology leaders by Industry Era magazine. With that, I will pass it over to Arvind to start the conversation about why returns matter, reverse logistics, the customer experience, and cost implications. Arvind?
As we know, traditionally, typically, anything that customer buys online, there's a higher rate of returns than they would have ability or opportunity to touch and feel. So, in today's discussion, we'd like to have your thoughts and see what our business is looking to, how businesses are doing, what business ought to do to navigate this, let's call it, new reality. And so with that, I'll maybe open it up to you, Robert, to see what are you seeing out there, especially with the pandemic and digitization taking so much steam that it is now actually absolutely relevant for any business to be relevant to have a digital business in place.
Well, certainly, Arvind. Yes, I mean, it's table stakes, as I think we've all seen with the the pandemic and the need to be able to support curbside pickup, deliver to store for pickup, and deliver to home. And with that, and people becoming more accustomed, I know myself, we definitely do a lot more delivery now than we ever did. With that prevalence, retailers and brands need to be thinking about, I'll say, the unfortunate side of reverse logistics, because there are the more you're selling without the face-to-face interaction with the client and the customer, the more likely there's going to be a prevalence of those returns. And as we alluded to, there's been an immediate pivot to be able to fulfill, and maybe not as much preparation and thought went into how to handle those returns and how to use that as an opportunity. And this is really what we are espousing, as use it as an opportunity to really delight your customer. It's not always the positive where they are returning one of the products that they bought, but to the extent you can make that a very positive, long-lasting, good experience, the chances of them buying from you again, or engaging in your store and even online to buy additional or different products is greatly enhanced. So just giving that thought about how returns fit into your actual selling and or upselling model is something that we've really been espousing, and curious if you're seeing the same, Arvind, in some of your experiences.
No, that's a great point, Robert. Absolutely, with the and likewise, great charge, the digital buying online, buying anything and everything online has just completely gone through the roof for me on personal level, and so is continuous, sometimes call it less than inspiring. I call it walk of shame back to the reverse logistic point. You ship the products back, and there's a varying degree of experience. And I find on a personal level, there's a tremendous opportunity, as you call it, in terms of businesses, brands to take this reverse logistics or return experience to be converting into an opportunity for them to maybe further engender the loyalty to their brands, and B, and to actually have an opportunity to get them back into interaction with your brand, into your four walls, and potentially upsell far more other products and services. So what we are seeing also, not very different from what you are saying, Robert, is increasingly, there used to be, there will be a digital strategy, then there's a brick and mortar strategy. But with the pandemic, where a lot of businesses saw their stores become dark stores overnight, and they were able to force to somehow figure out a way to leverage those stores, those inventories, those touch points, which are typically closer to customers, as on one side, use them as very quick delivery to the customer for whatever product they may have purchased, as opposed to having a centralized distribution model. But more importantly, also, to your point, you're saying curbside pickup or curbside delivery or return back is where opportunities were tapped into by businesses who are a little bit ahead of the curve into quote unquote their omni strategies. And so with what we're seeing is that businesses who are still seeing as silos, brick and mortar versus digital, are increasingly becoming either irrelevant or sometimes out of business. And businesses who are already a little bit ahead of the curve and thinking whole experience journey, not only from purchasing a product, but all the way back to something returning as a holistically, regardless of the channel, are blossoming. The businesses like Home Depot or Walmart, and they come to mind where they're taking the market share from others. So, but I think that the whole still the challenge of returns and converting into opportunity for businesses is still much work to be done, and that's where I think we like to pick up your further thoughts in terms of hey, returning. And if you are an online guy, if somebody bought product online or in store, how do you offer a consistent, persistent experience to the customer, where on front side maybe there's less opportunity for them to return, maybe I don't know, there's some opportunities there, but then on the back side, what are the strategic moves businesses could make in the years to come? Maybe like a little bit more double clicking from you on that, Robert.
Yeah, I mean, those are there's a lot to unpack there. Well, there's about 3 times as much product returned when an order is placed online versus in store. That's just based on the last couple of years of tracking that information. And so one of the things that brands really need to start to think about is the cost of returns. And yes, we need to make sure as good stewards of our customers how we engage them, but we also need to think about how do we do this in a way that doesn't bankrupt us. We know that the logistics out to the customer is expensive on a single unit or couple unit basis, and then when 30% of those goods are coming back, really thinking about that whole loop that could happen for those 3 out of 10 situations. What is a way to delight the customer, but do it in a way that accounts for that cost in the product price, but also is less onerous. And some of the things that we're seeing companies do, and this is costly, but actually less costly depending on the value of the product. Some companies like Walmart and Amazon are telling their customers that want to return certain goods to just keep them or donate them or destroy them if for some reason they just don't want to have them, because the reverse logistics of the cost of getting it back from home to their distribution center is expensive. And that's actually a very customer favored approach, because not that people are purposely going to do it to try and be fraudulent, but the fact that they don't have to go through the hassle of doing that is a value add. You've got some companies, well, Amazon seems to be the leader in this, starting to partner with other brands that have proximate locations for drop-offs, like Amazon's program with Kohl's. Not that everyone has a Kohl's in their neighborhood, but they're a lot more prevalent than not. And so the ability to have a drop-off option for a customer to then come in and handle that, and then for a Kohl's who's offering that service to then have a new customer walk in the door is a boon, right? And the customers themselves then get to engage and maybe get a different or similar product that they had bought online through Amazon in that example. So there's there's several different models that are emerging, and those are a couple of them, but they're born out of trying to reduce the cost but still provide the consumer a really good experience.
Yeah, and that's great. And you have 2 points you make, and I can totally see that. Relative to first is for businesses to factor in potentially the cost thereof of double-digit returns, which is just how the nature of the business is, will help them become a little bit more holistic in their overall logistics and assortment. But then on the other side of it, sometimes practicality will dictate that. You gave an example of Walmart or some other companies where they might just want to just keep it, as opposed to hassling the customer, coming back and bringing the product. Just asking them to keep it will engender for sure A, the trust, and then B, the loyalty, and then C, potentially inspire them to buy even more freely in future. And our customers are not natively, organically looking to take advantage of such strategies offered by businesses. So I can totally see that how that's just a practical. It just makes sense that businesses would benefit from that in multiple ways in doing that. But then on the other side of it, which is where the offering convenience of return, the having strategic relationship with complementary businesses to offer drop-off points, I think it's also generates a lot of win-win. But then how about other another additional side of that, which I personally endured, Robert? Not sure if you feel that. It may be very well that in Canada it happens that, I find when it comes to returning, besides the logistics of that as a customer, even the returns of refunds, it's not as frictionless as it could be. It takes sometimes, there's no visibility. It's almost like an opaque system. You ship the product back and then you wait and you check sometimes daily or weekly basis for email to drop. And then before the funds get credited back, there's no visibility at all. Do you have any point of view on that? Just something that you're hearing and businesses should do or could do?
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up. There are loyalty programs where, when consumers opt in certain return scenarios with certain brands, where upon the validation of a product that's going to be returned, whether it's through the the printing of a return label, or in some examples where they have relationships with retailers like Staples, where Staples in and of themselves is serving as a hub. They are refunding that money, the brand from whom the consumer bought it, upon that first recognition of that a return is happening. So for their loyal customers, they're saying, I want to make that as frictionless as possible, to your point, and not only frictionless, but to the immediacy of that refund to go back into, whether it was put on a credit card in all likelihood. So the leading brands are giving thought to that, because it is well, it's annoying, right? You don't know when you're going to get that money refunded, and then you're at the risk of the postal service or whatever delivery service that you're working with, and then it getting checked into a distribution center and the like. So there's risk there, but there's an increasing number of companies that are doing that for their loyal customers. And then one other point that I've read and seen some of our clients do is the likelihood of fraudulent claims is obviously less for your companies that have opted into your loyalty program. But even for those who haven't, the in-person interaction has left most companies feeling that the fraud is far less. Meaning, somebody could say, "I'm going to be returning everything in the box, and I want all my money back, and I only put one item in the box." Well, there's really no gut check there. There's no visual check until it gets back to a distribution center. When you have to interact with a human at one of these regional drop-off locations, which is actually more convenient for the customer, they're finding that there's less fraud because people are less inclined to do that when they're having to make eye contact with somebody to do the drop-off. So a lot there.
Yeah, and this is a great point. Going back to again convenience and trust built on repeated, trust, reliable, provable behavior, and then having opportunities for businesses that are maybe regional or national or global brands, and having those alliances to offer this drop-off point. I think that makes a lot of sense. And quite frankly, it's the probably an idea that is going to only pick up more and more steam, because it creates a win-win on all sides. Customer wins because they're comfortable getting product dropped off inconvenient and get the refund immediately, and then whatever the business from where they bought the product, they win because they win the loyalty, and then whatever partner they're using for enabling the service also wins because they have potentially a new customer into their own brand. But then how about, Robert, as one of the last toucher points, average Joe, increasingly a lot of mom and pop with the digitization enabled by Shopify and such, where any small entrepreneur is able to have access to a very large, not only national, but even continental or global market. And what advice would you have for those businesses where they're just tapping a large network, but they don't have wherewithal to build these alliances to offer up convenience of dropping of parcels? So any thoughts for that, Robert, that comes to mind? Advice for businesses?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. There are still, I'll call them aggregators. There's services like Happy Returns and such that are available through a partnership. Now, the mom and pop would have to still be part of that network where you can deliver as a consumer doing a return, deliver your returned product to one of numerous locations throughout North America. But it's harder. It's harder for the smaller. When you say mom and pop, right? I mean, you're literally, perhaps somebody's making some things out of their basement or what have you, right? It's easy to put up a website and sell something. It's a little bit harder to do all the services and such. So that's why there are these third parties available. Another interesting element. I know that maybe I'm not the typical shopper. Well, I know I'm not. But I buy, 90% of what I buy online is through Amazon. And at least in North America, as a Prime member, they have a sort of a recommended day once a week when they're going to come to your house. They'll come every day, but from a sustainability and environmental standpoint, they offer like a once a week, so that as you aggregate product throughout the week, they can then not have to make as many trips to you. The same holds true on the reverse side. By working with these companies that have the regional drop points, a similar model is an appeal to those who not only want to return their product, but they want to do it in a socially compliant and sensitive way. So that's another interesting aspect of this, because when you think about if 30% of all online purchases are going to be returned, and often it's one or two items, just think about all the the logistics, overhead, fuel, and such that goes into moving, small parcels from point A to point B. So there's, I think, going to be a growing sensitivity to that, where these regionalizations and drop points are going to become even more favored for that reason, among others.
Yeah, and that's a great point, actually, that, very seldom, sometimes as a shopper, we don't think, but businesses, and if they need to build loyalty and the convenience and offer the convenience to the customers, the environmental footprint is something that is just becomes sometimes an afterthought, but not anymore. So that becomes probably, perhaps, Robert, a topic for another chat. Really happy to hear your thoughts today, and great to hear that you are seeing in your network, in your partners, that businesses are increasingly paying far more attention to the reverse logistics side of that, and how some of the moves they could potentially make to convert that return experience as an opportunity for themselves, and in process earn the lifetime brand loyalty from their customers. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, it's a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Taking Stock, Talking All Things Retail. In today's episode, Robert Kaufman, CEO of the Parker Avery Group, and Arvind Gupta, President of Jesta I.S, discussed why returns matter, reverse logistics, the customer experience, and cost implications. We hope you enjoyed their conversation and will contact us if you have any questions or comments. Please enjoy past and future Taking Stock, Talking All Things Retail podcasts on this channel. We appreciate your loyalty.